As Machiavelli once said, it is much safer to be feared than loved when one must choose. The secret isn't noise, it's presence. And today I'll show you how to master it using nonverbal Machiavellian tactics: physical bearing, measured silence, and gaze. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly how to stand, pause, and stare to make others lean in and listen. This isn't about being liked, it's about being unforgettable. If you're ready to stop fading into the background and start commanding the room without saying a word, hit that like button and subscribe, because power begins with presence, and this is just the beginning. Think about this. How often have you bent over backward trying to please others, only to feel like they don't even notice you? You say the right things, you show up for people, you avoid conflict, and yet it's like your wallpaper: present but invisible, overlooked, ignored, disrespected. And if someone does notice you, it's not because they respect you, it's because you're convenient. Why does this happen? It happens because being liked isn't the same thing as being valued. Let's be clear about something. When you prioritize being liked above all else, you're essentially telling the world, "I'm safe. I'll never challenge you." That might sound good on paper, but here's the problem. People don't fear what's safe. They don't hold it in high regard. In fact, they rarely even acknowledge it. And as harsh as it sounds, this behavior relegates you to the background. You make yourself so predictable, so agreeable, that others stop considering you at all. Your ability to surprise them, to keep them on edge, is gone. Think about group discussions or meetings you've been in. Have you ever noticed how the person who tries the hardest to keep the peace is often the one whose voice gets drowned out? They go out of their way to smile, nod, and be relatable. But no one really listens when it matters. Instead, the room gravitates towards someone who brings a certain weight, a person who, even in silence, seems like they could tip the scales. Why? Because they hold something back. They're not playing the same game of approval. They don't dilute themselves to make others comfortable. Everything we've been taught growing up says likability leads to success. Smile more, be nice, be open. But here's the truth. In a world of power games, predictability invites control. Machiavelli warned, "It is much safer to be feared than loved when one must choose." He wasn't advocating cruelty. He was pointing out that in a world where people instinctively test boundaries, those who are too agreeable, too predictable, are often dismissed. Fear, or more accurately, an air of mystery, ensures you're not ignored. That edge, that unpredictability, commands attention. Take a moment to reflect on this. Think about the figures you admire most. Are they merely liked? Or do they carry a certain sharpness, an aura that makes you hesitate before assuming you fully understand them? That hesitation isn't just respect, it's power. People are drawn to what they can't quite figure out. When you're too easy to read, you become harmless. And harmless doesn't inspire respect. It inspires indifference. What if you weren't so easy to read? What if you made people hesitate before speaking to you or about you? Mystery forces curiosity. And curiosity, well, that's the root of power. When people can't predict your moves, they watch you. They consider their words more carefully. They stay on edge, trying to figure you out. That's respect. And what's fascinating is that this doesn't come naturally from kindness. It comes from control, a little bit of unpredictability, a little bit of fear. You've been told your whole life that being good will make people respect you, but here's the truth. Most don't want to hear. Being liked is not enough. Think about it. Entire empires have been built not by the kindest, but by those who understood human nature and played it to their advantage. Machiavelli's principle wasn't about rejecting kindness entirely, but about understanding that fear ensures you aren't ignored. People may not like you, but they will understand the consequences of underestimating you. That's what makes you impossible to overlook. Here's the key. Fear and respect are not about being rude or cruel. They come from a certain presence, a sense that you hold something back. It could be your silence, it could be your composure, or it could be the fact that you're not playing the same social game everyone else is desperate to win. Most people clamor for approval. They reveal everything about themselves all at once, trying to seem approachable. But when you hold part of yourself back, you become an enigma. And people respect what they don't fully understand. Think about how this plays out in everyday life. Have you ever noticed how, when you stop replying to messages, people suddenly reach out to check in? Your silence creates a gap that draws their attention. That's the power of unpredictability. It forces people to focus on you. Machines are predictable. People who give away everything without provocation are predictable. But aligning yourself with mystery, that's power. Instead of putting all your cards on the table, you make others question what's happening in your mind. They'll respect you because they're forced to. They need to focus on you just to navigate the unknowable terrain you've created. Here's another thing to consider. When you're focused on being liked, you end up shaping yourself to meet the expectations of those around you. You dilute your personality and instincts. If someone is upset, you immediately try to smooth things over. You downplay yourself to keep everyone else comfortable. And what do you gain in return? A temporary pat on the back, if that. The reality is, you're cutting yourself down for people who won't even notice the effort. Because here's a harsh truth. Comfort breeds complacency. If you make everyone comfortable, you don't challenge them. And when you don't challenge them, you make yourself forgettable. If you want to change this, you have to stop thinking like someone desperate for approval. You have to start thinking like someone whose very existence commands respect, someone who doesn't need to beg for attention. Machiavellian principles are not about faking confidence. They're about building it from the ground up by embracing the power of being unreadable. You don't need to be loud, overly assertive, or fake aggression. You just need to stop trying to make everyone happy all the time. Because when you're too busy trying to please, you rob yourself of the space to hold presence. Here's what this boils down to. Being liked without being feared is the same as being invisible. It's comfortable, yes, but comfort doesn't move people. And if your goal is to truly be seen, truly be respected, you must accept that not everyone will like you, and let that be their problem, not yours. Fear isn't about intimidation. It's about clarity. A person who radiates clarity of purpose and conviction carries a weight in every interaction they're part of. Others will instinctively respect the boundaries that person sets, even if they can't articulate why. Now you might be wondering, how does this translate to real life? How do you start becoming someone who shifts the dynamics of every room you walk into without saying a word? That's where Machiavelli's principles start to become practical. Commanding fear and respect begins with your presence, how you stand, how you move, the energy you carry with you before you even open your mouth. Everything you are signals something to the world, whether you're harmless or someone to keep an eye on. And that's exactly where we're headed next, the silent power of presence. What if I told you it's not what you say, but how you exist within a space that dictates how others treat you? What if, through nothing more than your posture, your movement, and your deliberate stillness, you could shift an entire room's focus onto you? Let's uncover that key first. What if I told you that in a room buzzing with voices, the chatter, the jokes, the arguments, the person who says the least often holds the most control? You might think influence comes from being the loudest, the most charming, or the sharpest wit in the conversation. But in reality, power belongs to the one who exerts presence, defined not by their words, but the unshakable effect of simply being. It's a truth people often overlook, and that ignorance costs them every single day. The way you carry yourself, the way you occupy physical and psychological space, speaks before you ever do. And here's the kicker. That voice, the silent one, will always be louder than words. Now let's unpack this idea. Presence. It's what makes some people walk into a room and instantly shift the atmosphere. Without fanfare, without gimmicks, and certainly without saying a word. It starts with the way they stand, the way they move, even the cadence of their breaths as they exist in that space. These things might seem subtle or even meaningless, but they're not. Human beings are wired to notice details like how someone holds themselves and how decisively they move. We instinctively assign meaning to these signals before we hear a word from that person. In this way, your physical presence, your unspoken message, decides whether others see you as harmless or formidable, powerless or commanding. The problem? Most people ignore this entirely. They focus only on what to say, not realizing the words barely matter if your presence doesn't carry weight. Imagine someone delivering the most perfect argument, confident in the logic of their position, but slouched, fidgeting, shoulders collapsing inward. Their words might make sense, but their body is telling an entirely different story. Nothing about them says power. No one takes them seriously. Not really. On the flip side, think about someone who steps into the same room, walks deliberately, and chooses their spot carefully. They sit or stand with a calm focus, shoulders back, chest open, and eyes set in no rush to dart toward comfort. They say little, maybe nothing at all. Maybe all they do is lean back slightly in their chair and fold their hands in a way that suggests patience as much as certainty. There's no wasted movement, nothing needy or excessive. That person feels different, even to those who haven't consciously noticed them yet. It's magnetic. People take them seriously, even when that seriousness is steeped in caution more than admiration. History is filled with examples of this silent power at work. Take General Eisenhower, whose calm and composed bearing during critical wartime meetings was often captured in photographs. Even in the middle of chaos, his presence radiated control and steadiness, influencing those around him without needing dramatic gestures or words. Or think of fictional characters like Vito Corleone from The Godfather. He doesn't need to rage or posture wildly. His presence and the deliberate nature of his movements make him the one people fear. These examples illustrate an undeniable truth. When your presence suggests control, people treat you with care. The science behind this isn't a mystery either. Studies on body language point again and again to the same idea. Dominant postures and deliberate actions make others perceive you as more powerful. For example, research from Dr. Amy Cuddy at Harvard University describes what's called power posing. Standing wide with your feet planted firmly and your arms open changes not only the way others perceive you, but also your own physiology. Her studies showed that adopting these postures raised testosterone levels linked to dominance and lowered cortisol, the stress hormone. This physiological shift doesn't just make you feel more in control, it ensures others see it too, often without even realizing why. But presence isn't only about where you place your feet or how far you lean back. It's also about movement, or rather, the lack of unnecessary movement. Someone who commands attention doesn't fidget. They don't pace nervously or constantly scan for approval. Every move they make appears intentional, sending one clear message: I am in control of myself. When you project control over yourself, others assume you hold some form of control over the room as well. No one says it out loud, but the desire to watch and tread with caution around you becomes second nature. Here's something even more telling. The quietest person in the room is often the one everyone watches. This doesn't happen because of admiration, it's precaution. People are watching you not so they can join in your silence, but because they're aware that someone who chooses not to expend their energy frivolously often possesses something the loudest voices lack: restraint. In Machiavellian strategy, restraint is power. It suggests you are operating from a position of abundance rather than need. The more patient you appear, the more controlled your presence feels, and the less predictable you become. Start thinking about how you can develop this presence. What does it mean to exert weight in a room without leaning on words to do it? Simple, deliberate changes add up to massive shifts. Start with how you stand. Your posture should feel expansive but not exaggerated. Open shoulders, steady eye level, arms resting naturally, and feet firmly grounded. Here's a micro practice you can try. Stand with your feet shoulder-width apart, roll your shoulders back, and hold the position for 30 seconds without shifting. Notice how it changes your internal sense of control. Next, slow down your movements. Walk slower than you usually would, and make an effort to eliminate small, unnecessary gestures. The less frantic you seem, the more focused you'll appear. Finally, when stillness serves you best, don't fill the space with action just for the sake of filling it. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is simply remain. Remain calm. Remain composed. Remain quiet when everyone else scrambles to break the silence. Give them time to question what you're thinking. We're trained to believe that action is always stronger than inaction, but that's not true. Action is only respected when it has meaning. Unreadable stillness, however, carries meaning all its own. Imagine standing in a group discussion while everyone else rushes to contribute. Instead of blurting something out, you pause, turning your head calmly to survey the room. You shift your weight ever so slightly into the space you occupy, holding your ground fully, but without aggression. At first, people might glance at you, curious about your lack of response. Then, the longer your silence stretches, the harder it becomes to ignore you. Eyes start darting your way. Whispers trail off mid-sentence. What's fascinating isn't just your restraint, it's their reaction to it. In those moments, you've captured control of the room, not by filling it with energy, but pulling it steadily toward you. What if you could radiate that calm power without saying a word? When you speak, you're asking for attention. When you exist in silence with presence, you force people to give it to you freely.